Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me this lunchtime. It's great to see some friendly faces and also some that I don't know. Feel free to have cameras on or off. It would be lovely to see your faces, but if you prefer to keep your cameras off, that's absolutely fine. I'll just briefly introduce myself. I'm a nutritional therapist. You might not have heard of that before. But it's very much centered on that therapeutic rapport in supporting people to make nutritional changes. But I also do work with businesses, supporting staff wellbeing. It's a really nice mix, and also corporates and, charities and CICs as well. It's quite nice to get messages to people in a group setting so that you can reach more people. So today I'm going to be talking to you about our second brain, which is in our guts. I'm really super passionate about this, the gut-brain connection. We often think of our mental health as in our heads and our physical health in our body from the neck down. And what I'm encouraging you to think about today is actually that they are intrinsically connected. So your mental health is in your whole body and your physical health is also in your heads. It's not necessarily a concept that we've grown up with, so our kind of medical model separates them. But we're going to talk about various bodily functions today and how they are all over the body and the mind. Nothing I say today is intended to constitute medical advice. I must say that. So if some things start to resonate with you in relation to personal symptoms, then please do get them checked out with your GP, or feel free to contact me separately if you've got any worries. I am going to start some slides, but hopefully it's not death by PowerPoint and you will get the slides afterwards. I know that's a really common question when we start. Will we get the slides? And yes, you will. So you don't need to necessarily write a huge amount down. Before we start, I would just like us to take a little minute on reflection. We can get really busy, and if you're using your lunch break today to attend this, please do try and get a break outside, or eat your lunch away from your desk if you can. So we can get really busy. You're fitting this in amongst your working day. So I'd just like us to really think about take a couple of breaths and put one hand just below our diaphragm. And I'm going to ask you to think of a number in your head of how your gut is behaving today. So 10 being absolutely no problems, it's nice and calm. And 1 being, you're struggling with certain issues, which we're going to go into. So, is your stomach rumbling because it's not near lunchtime? Have you managed to go to the bathroom and pass stools today? So how is your stomach actually feeling right now? So 10, fantastic. 1, you've got a history of problems, you're really not feeling good. And just, if you can, write it down or think of a number in your head. And then I'd like it to take you to your head. So in terms of our emotions, our stress levels, our mood, happy, sad, how are you feeling in terms of your head right now? So out of 10, you've had a nice Easter break, you're feeling raring, ready to go, you're feeling alert, ready to take this information in, or are you feeling distracted, not very confident? Has someone upset you today? What's going on in your mind? Susie and I were talking just before we started about how we can have lots of things whirring around in our heads and it can be quite difficult to concentrate, something that we're going to cover. And then finally, how healthy would you rate your diet out of 10? Do you know there's something that you can be doing to improve? Just haven't got around to it? Or are you quite happy with, what your sort of meals are looking like at the moment? So just that little bit of reflection, because life can get so busy and we don't often think or listen to the cues that our body's giving us. Okay, so I'm just going to start sharing my screen and we'll get started. Oh, sorry, I didn't say questions were going to be halfway through and also at the end. Feel free to put them in the chat box or unmute yourself when we come to it and ask the questions direct. So our second brain is our gut. If that wasn't clear, that's what we're going to be talking about mainly today. Just a little bit of who I am. I've mentioned I do one-to-one therapy, group coaching, a lot of work with businesses, and do have access to lots of tests and supplements if you think there's something going on for you. So we're going to be talking about why this matters. Why does the gut matter? Why shouldn't we just get on with our day and forget what's going on with our sort of bodily symptoms? What is this gut-brain connection that I keep banging on about? An introduction to the microbiome. So this seems to be a bit of a buzzword. It's something I've been living with for a few years, but seems to be quite trendy. We're starting to see it on mainstream TV. So we're going to talk about what the microbiome actually is. And brain inflammation. So things like brain fog. I hear it a lot in relation to the menopause, where you just can't think straight, like that mist has come down. What is going on with brain fog and lack of concentration and lack of focus, getting through the day and actually just being able to achieve everything we want to. And a bit of a food action plan. What is going to help this gut-brain connection? So help our stomach calm down if that's an issue, and help our brain focus and get through the day. So I'm really, really passionate about this gut-brain connection in terms of mental health. You'll see from this map here, the dark purple in the northeast, we've got a really high prevalence of mental health problems in the northeast, and that's something that I want to see change. Now, food isn't going to be the panacea. Obviously, it can't be all things to all people, but it can really help with anxiety and depression. So we've got a big problem with depression, 8 million people with anxiety, nearly 1 million people off with stress or anxiety from work, and over £100 billion a year lost in mental ill health. So it's a big problem when we are breaking down the stigma, but still lots of work to be done. Our poo, we don't talk about this so much. So our gastrointestinal health, we've got nearly half of the population struggling with some kind of digestive discomfort. And we've got over 3 million people with IBS. So IBS is irritable bowel syndrome. It's essentially what we call a functional disorder. So you think about bloating, pain, cramping, constipation, diarrhea, just not feeling good, as opposed to IBD, which is inflammatory bowel disease. And that's when often medically they will find something structurally wrong in the gut. So they might put cameras up or down, have a look. They might find bleeding, irritation, some kind of structural issue. So inflammatory bowel disease there's a lot less stigma because it's medicalized, whereas with IBS, there's a huge amount of stigma about not talking about our gut function. And this reflects in the work situation as well. So we've got a quarter of IBS sufferers phoning in sick. And there's a lot of presenteeism. So if you are not feeling good, then you're not going to be able to give your best at work. If you're worrying about where the toilet is, so particularly those who might not work in offices, if you're on the road, if you're driving, having to plan your toilet stops and are you going to make it to the next toilet? It's a really distressing feeling and it really impacts quality of life. So I would like to try and open up this conversation about our guts. This graph here is what we call the Bristol stool chart. Not the most pleasant to look at, but again, it's breaking down. Do you actually look at your poo? Type there at the top that's more like constipation, perhaps a bit of dehydration. And at the bottom, type 7 is when you're having a diarrhea episode, very watery, explosive, having to really run to the toilet, not sure if you'll make it. So type 3 and 4 is where we're looking, ideally to be. Now, there will be elements, if you've had some dehydration, 1 or 2 days at either end of the spectrum is not a huge problem. Consistently, if you're consistently at one end or the other, then it might be worth having a conversation. And also, how often do you go to the toilet? So 1 to 3 times, pretty normal. If you're not going every day, if you're not passing stools every day, then you're constipated. And what this can lead to is a build of toxic body. So you're not eliminating and you're not giving the body a chance to get rid of internal toxins that the body makes naturally. So we're always building down, breaking down and building up all of our tissues, and our old body parts, if you like, need to be excreted. If you're struggling with diarrhea long term, then that can lead to nutrient deficiency. So food is passing through the digestive tract too fast, and you're not getting a chance to absorb. So you could have the best diet in the world, but are you actually absorbing all the nutrients that you're putting in? So this is, the transit time, the sort of frequency, and the constitution is really important and gives us some clues to our health. So if you have a mobile phone handy, I would just like you to go to Slido. Some of you might have seen this before, but if you just put slido.com into your internet browser, or you can use this QR code. We've got a number here on the left-hand side, 2952903. Should just ask you for that code. And then it should just give you the option to answer this question. So over the last year, have you struggled with any of these symptoms? And hopefully we can see some, these answers are anonymous, so don't worry, no names attached. So please be honest if you can. It's quite cool, isn't it, seeing the answers change on screen? Okay, still some coming through. So we've got 13, here we go. Still got some more to answer. So bloating at the moment, really common. Bloating is essentially gas. So food can sit in our small intestine and not necessarily pass through. And it can ferment, it causes a gas, and that's what causes bloating essentially. So it's not necessarily anything to worry about unless it's causing you pain or discomfort. It can be part of our natural digestive process, but it can be uncomfortable. Okay. So there's a fair range there of symptoms. And this kind of reflects kind of what we saw in the previous stat, that at any one time, 40 to 50% of people are struggling with some kind of digestive discomfort. So, it's just useful to check in, is this kind of reflective in the audience? And it's not good to see, but it kind of makes the point that we don't necessarily talk about it, but it's going on. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for answering that question. So going back to the gut-brain connection, why would the gut be misbehaving sometimes? There's lots going on in our digestive tract. So we've got our stomach, we've got our small and large intestines, liver, gallbladder, pancreas. So lots of moving parts, like an orchestra, all playing a part and all working in tandem with each other. And within all of those digestive organs, there's lots of other body systems doing a dance. So we've got the nervous system, this vagus nerve, after which my business is named, because it's so crucial and we don't necessarily use it to our advantage so much. So the vagus nerve runs from our brains all the way through these organs and is part of our rest and digest nervous system. So when we eat, you know, in an ideal world, we should be calm, ready to eat. And this turns on our digestive juices. If you ever hear gurgling when you're hungry, that's a good sign. It's good that your digestive juices are getting ready to eat. We've also got a 24-hour body clock. So often our bodies will know when food's expected, you know, if you have a regular eating pattern. So we've got the vagus nerve, we've got all these parts, but we've got lots of nerves. So we've got a whole nervous system within our digestive tract. We've got, I'll never remember this, I've written it down, 500 million neurons. So these are nerve cells within our digestive tract. So if you think about that gut feeling, you know something's not quite right, or you're nervous before an interview and you might have to evacuate, or you've got butterflies when you met someone new who you really like. You know, our intuition, not necessarily science, but our intuition tells us. And how often do we listen to that gut? You know, how often have you ignored a gut feeling and then it's proven you right? That person was up to no good. So I'm encouraging you to think about these gut feelings and starting to listen to the body signals. We can get so busy in our days that we just switch off from what the body's trying to tell us. And if we can get this rest and digest system in balance with the fight or flight, then our whole digestive system will work better. We're much less likely to have the bloating and the cramping and the pain when the body's actually ready to eat. Neurotransmitters. So we might have heard of serotonin in connection to depression. So antidepressants have got, they try to promote serotonin in the brain. So it's thought, or the sort of the historical thoughts have been that the brain's lacking in serotonin. We actually make 90% of that neurotransmitter in the gut. So the gut is making these brain chemicals, or what we think of as brain chemicals, they're making them in the gut, and they've got to be transported across the blood-brain barrier to have an impact. Dopamine, acetylcholine, I'm going to come on to explain these a little bit more. Our immune system, 70% of our immune system is in our gut lining. So our mouth, our throat, our lungs, our digestive tract, we have a mucus. Think about that saliva going when you think of something you really want to eat, or maybe that saliva is going because it's near lunchtime. This is our first line of protection. So our immune system is in constant surveillance. Every time you eat, is this friend or foe? Is there salmonella in the egg? You know, is there E. coli in the chicken? It's always looking out to make sure that what you're eating is safe for digestion. So we've got a mucus that protects us. It's like the security guard at the front of the department store. It's on guard. And if they sense a problem, they'll call the cavalry in. So these mucus linings are really important to support our digestion and our immune system. And then we've got hormones. Oh, hormones is a whole other subject in itself. But here's some of the key ones. Cortisol, our stress hormone, that's what gets us up in the morning. Insulin carries our glucose, our sugar around the body. Our thyroid gland sets our metabolism, how much energy or we're going to burn in that day. And our sex hormones, so estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all of these will be affected by gut function and vice versa. So no body system is ever working in isolation. And as I've mentioned, the nutrient status. So how well this is functioning will affect how much you're actually absorbing. So going back to these nerves, so this purple line here on this graph, it's quite difficult to find a graph or a picture that's not very scientific. So this is essentially our gut lining. So it's very, very thin. It's only 3 cells thick. Our skin is 5 cells, so it's very thin. And that's what our food transports across this gut lining to be absorbed into the bloodstream to get carried around the body. So this gut lining is important that we keep it intact. But the gut will produce these neurotransmitters, so adrenaline and cortisol to keep us alert and in that fight or flight state. Dopamine is our reward state. So are you looking for a hit of dopamine, maybe from your phone or from food? You know, our pleasure center, where do we get pleasure? Serotonin, I've mentioned, our happy hormone. GABA, often when we're anxious, we're lacking in GABA. So it kind of puts the brakes on all that excitation in the brain. And acetylcholine is for memory. So the gut can make these chemicals. We think of them as in our head, but actually they're made in the gut. So this gut lining and the integrity is really important to this. And then the microbiome. We've got around 2 kilos of bacteria, fungi, viruses largely within our large colon, our large intestine. There's so much research going on in this area. It's crazy. Over the last 10, 15 years in particular, we now know that these gut bugs are integral to our systemic health. And there's actually more genetic code in the bacteria than our human body has. So who is the host? You know, are we in charge or are the gut bugs in charge? It's a serious question that's being asked in the scientific field. It's so important to keep our gut bugs happy for it to protect not just our bodily health, but also our mental health. So we know there are connections between anxiety, depression, various mental states like schizophrenia, bipolar, lots of mental health conditions, and the condition of our gut. They make nutrients for us, they give us energy, and they produce lots of beneficial molecules. So if the gut bugs are out of balance, then we're going to be lacking in the beneficial compounds that they make. You might have heard of probiotics. So things like the little Actimel drinks that you get in the supermarket. Lactobacillus and bifidobacterium are the most common and most researched strains of bacteria that we know are beneficial and look after us all. So those drinks, why they're on the shelves, is because they've done so much research that they know there's no adverse effects of taking them. So they are our live bacteria. So we can put live bacteria back in. But what's just as important as adding bacteria is feeding our existing gut. So these are the prebiotics, our fiber, our food, feeding our gut bugs naturally rather than relying on, an external drink or a supplement is just as important as that live bacteria. The postbiotics, these are these beneficial compounds. So the body makes something called short chain fatty acids, which help to lower inflammation, have a really positive effect on the immune system, and also support the brain and our mental health. So if the gut bugs are not in a good shape, we can't make those postbiotics. And then the psychobiotics is what's coming. So there's going to be a new class of these bacteria which are in the research stage that will basically modulate our mental health. So if you're anxious, we're not far off getting to the stage where there'll be a bacteria strain that can support this. So it's really super important. So what actually affects affects the microbiome. Lots of different things. So going back to how you were born, was that a normal delivery or was it C-section? Were you breastfed? So during breastfeeding, the bacteria migrate from the gut to the breast milk. I find that absolutely fascinating, how the body can change so that the breast milk can actually pass those strains of bacteria onto the baby. Antibiotics, so we know they're amazing, and where would we be without the sort of wonders of medical technology? But antibiotics will wipe out a lot of strains of your bacteria. So if you've had frequent antibiotics, you may well have more frequent gut problems, because it can take a few months for the gut to repopulate after taking them. Stress will open up that gut lining, so that delicate gut lining between the gut lumen, where the food's passing through, and our bloodstream, that can become patchy, and it can allow toxins to get into the bloodstream, which then causes a immune response. So stress can also have this effect. You want to keep our stress levels down. Easier said than done, I'm sure. Toxins, sugar, too much fat, alcohol, lots of different factors. So once you've got these slides at home, have a think about what applies to you on this list, and is any that you can perhaps modulate. And this is the last slide before I'm going to stop for a break, because there's a lot of information in there. We've got brain fog and inflammation in the brain. So are you struggling to concentrate? Poor memory? Do you feel really fatigued after eating? Do you find you're quite sensitive to smells or sounds, or hearing loss? So as we age, our brain can start to slow down a little bit. And I think to some extent we can feel this is inevitable. And certainly in relation to dementia and Alzheimer's, I think we've grown up with a message of, oh, well, it's part of getting old. Dementia is only 1% genetic. I think we think there's a much higher propensity of it just happening naturally, but that's not the case. And there's lots you can do from a diet and lifestyle perspective to prevent brain aging. If there's one action point you maybe take, is to look at this website called Food for the Brain. It's a free, lots of free resources, really good. And they do this cognitive function test. So you can go online, takes about 10 minutes, and it'll ask you a number of questions, and it'll give you a bit of a risk profile on dementia risk. So if you're having any kind of brain symptoms, it's something to maybe look at, because they now know, as much as dementia can't be reversed once you have it, there are diet and lifestyle measures that can help prevent it. So it's never too early to start to be thinking about our long-term health. The brain has got a blood-brain barrier. Just like that gut lining's got a barrier, our brain has got a barrier. And we know that when the gut, that gut lining is starting to become leaky, then that can affect the brain leakiness barrier as well. So these two barriers are connected. So looking after our gut automatically helps to protect our brain more so. So I'm just going to stop there. Lots of information as to the why we need to take action. And then I'm going to talk about food in a second. But is there any questions that we've got at this stage? Susie, go for it.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, with the sort of slide about brain inflammation, etc. If one does start to follow a sort of recommended diet, how soon could you see changes to those sort of symptoms?
That's really interesting. It's going to change for everyone. But last night, when I was just reacquainting myself with the Food for the Brain website, they've got a really nice case study on there of a gentleman in his 70s who started to see the signs of mild cognitive impairment often precedes dementia. And within 3 months of making changes, he started to get brain function back. So I think it can be quite quick. It doesn't necessarily, and the thing is, if you're not having symptoms, you're not necessarily going to know when the symptoms would come if you make changes. But yes, I think it can be pretty quick. Generally, I would say for any long-term benefit, 3 months is a nice time to start to see what changes are going to happen.
Great, thank you.
No questions? Okay. So we'll get onto the food, and maybe that will be a bit more food for thought then, because diet is so individual. The future is turning to personalized approach versus that one size fits all. So hopefully when we get to the food, you'll have some more questions for me. Okay. So we've talked about nerves, these neurotransmitters, hormones, immune cells, microbiome. There's lots of different things going on. So what do they need to function? This is not an exhaustive list, as you can imagine. It's quite hard to, I can do a webinar just on the food alone. There's lots of different nutrients involved, but this is your starting point. A key ingredient, things that I see very frequently, is not enough protein going in. Especially as we get older, we need to maintain our muscle mass. So we naturally lose muscle mass as we age, but there needs to be enough protein left over to rebuild the body continuously. So, for example, with serotonin and with dopamine and all those feel-good chemicals, there is a protein element that starts them off. So tryptophan, tyrosine, protein gets broke down into amino acids. These amino acids are the building blocks for these chemicals. So if there's not enough protein going in, your body will struggle to make the chemicals itself. So we've got animal protein, meat, fish, eggs, vegetarian protein, beans, lentils, chickpeas. Vegetables will have some protein, oats, whole grains, things like oats, quinoa, whole grain rice will have a bit of protein in, but we need good amounts of protein going in. Nuts and seeds as well. B vitamins, absolutely essential for the brain. And again, that Food for the Brain website will go into more detail as to why the B vitamins are needed. So we've got B1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 12. Don't ask me why there's gaps in that, but we've got lots of different B vitamins. They're needed for energy and they're needed for brain function. It actually helps the nerve cells talk to each other. So going back to that brain fog, if you're missing these B vitamins, that will potentially be one of the causes. Another one is iron. So iron is needed to carry oxygen around in our blood. So if the brain's not getting enough oxygen because you're anemic, that's a pretty easy fix to support the brain. So these foods here have got an array of protein and the B vitamins, which are really good for the gut and brain function. So my question is here, what's missing from this list? Is there anything that you could think of that the brain and the gut might need, or something that's in your diet that isn't on this list? Karen?
Just water, drink, because there's not much.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, absolutely. We need 1.5 to 2 litres of water a day. And we can often mistake hunger for hydration. Look at the chat. Dairy. Yeah, dairy, thank you. That's a good one, because dairy, it can get a bad rap these days. So our milk, yogurt, cheese, they are quite good in the trace minerals, so selenium and iodine. So if you have a vegan or vegetarian diet that doesn't have any dairy and you're not getting a lot of fish, you can often be missing some of the trace nutrients. So yes, dairy can certainly contribute to this sort of healthy picture. Good fats, thank you, Nicola. Yeah, so the brain is actually, where's the number? 60% fat. And again, fat gets a bad rap. Saturated fat is bad for us. Yes, in excess it is, but we need good fats. So this picture here of the salmon, omega-3, omega-3 enriched eggs, and nuts and seeds are also a source of omega-3. So we need these good fats, and we talk in nutrition circles about the ratio between omega-3 and 6. So omega-6 fats often are like our vegetable oils, which aren't bad for us, but in excess can be, because it can knock the omega-3 off our cell membranes. So if you're eating a lot of ready meals, takeaways, processed foods, fried foods outside of the home, that you don't know how much vegetable oil's been used, and I'm talking about, there's a lot of palm oil in ready meals, a lot of vegetable oils, rapeseed oils. In excess, they can knock omega-3 off. So this ratio between the two, in general, the nation is eating a lot of omega-6 and not enough omega-3. So are you getting nuts and seeds, oily fish, eggs in the diet? That's a question. So absolutely. Fruit and vegetables, yes, absolutely as well. So that 5 a day message from the government is the building block of any healthy diet, regardless of whether it's the gut or the brain. The research shows actually it's more like 10 per day we should be having, but the government set 5 a day because sometimes we can't can't get 2 or 3 in. So they've taken a policy decision that 5's more attainable, but actually 5 is more like the minimum that we should be looking for. That green tea at the bottom there's a compound called L-theanine in green tea, which is really calming and can support this GABA pathway. So anxiety is endemic in society, and I see it a lot with clients. Even that social anxiety post-pandemic, I think, still hanging around. So if there's any element of anxiety going on, green tea is one of those quick wins. Just having a couple of glasses, couple of cups versus normal tea, because it's got this L-theanine in it, and it's got also antioxidants which help repair the body. And chocolate, we've just had Easter. Dark chocolate is full of magnesium, plant chemicals, again in moderation, can be really helpful. What is also missing is ultra processed food. So half of our diet now in the UK is ultra processed, and these preservatives, flavorings, emulsifiers, the body is really not sure what to do with, and can really disrupt that gut lining and lead to leaky gut and leaky brain. So have a think about how much ultra processed food is in the diet. How often are you buying ready meals or eating out takeaways where you're not quite sure what the ingredients are? Because unfortunately, it disrupts more than just the gut lining. It makes us more hungry. The research shows that people with a lot of ultra processed food eat 500 calories more per day, and it's missing the prebiotics. So that fiber, the feeding the gut bugs, looking after that microbiome, it's missing with the ultra processed food. This sort of slide was taken in relation more from the cognition perspective. So looking after that focus and concentration, long-term dementia. You know, there are obviously overlaps, but these are the foods that we need to be getting in. Olive oil, again, you know, we've grown up in a bit of a fat-phobic society. Olive oil is amazing. It's very anti-inflammatory. It can also feed the gut bugs, helps that brain function. So olive oil, definitely one to incorporate. Whole grains, so moving away from those refined white flours, so bread, pasta, rice. If you can get some more whole grains, they've got more of those B vitamins in. White flour has had all the B vitamins stripped out. If you can go to spelt, rye, barley, you know, we've got quinoa, we've got lots of different grains that we don't necessarily eat a lot of in the UK. So again, a little swap there can make a big difference. So on meat consumption, red meat once or twice a week. That's kind of one of the components of the Mediterranean diet. Lots of research about that, and essentially the Mediterranean diet is the healthiest diet worldwide. All the research confirms this. So limiting our red meat to once or twice a week is ideal long term in getting that protein in. So think about your diet quality. The quality of our diet affects the brain through all of these body systems: nerves, immune, hormone, microbiome. So can we feed these gut bugs? Nutrient deficiencies are increasingly common. You'd think with the abundance of food that we've got in this country that this would be a thing of the past. It's absolutely not. I say iron, B vitamin deficiency, vitamin D, week in, week out. So there can be two reasons for this. One, the diet's lacking, or that we're not absorbing nutrients. So don't assume that you are getting everything, that your tissues are getting everything that you need. The gut and brain work in symbiosis. 80% of our communication is up to the brain and 20% down. So our guts are in charge. We think our brains are, but it's this gut, the second brain, that's in charge. And try and listen to what your body's telling you. At the end of the day, you know, have a check-in on your mood, checking on your gut function, check in on energy, what needs some tender loving care, because we don't want to wait until we get to illness. We want to try and avoid getting to that point. So 60% of chronic disease is lifestyle related. So there's so much power in our own hands to help ourselves. And, you know, the way the NHS is, unfortunately, you know, the NHS needs a helping hand as well to keep us out of hospital and our GP surgeries. So I actually can't believe it's 12:45 and I finished that on time. That must be a first for me. So I hopefully give you a little bit of a, you know, taster that this gut is so important in many different ways, but I'm happy to take questions. Beverly.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for addressing the red meat question, because that's for me, because there's so many conflicting, there's a lot of conflicting information. Don't do this, put meat out completely, only eat once a day. That's the latest thing within, you know, your 8-hour window, and then don't eat for 16 hours. You're like, but for me, definitely the red meat question was, well, surely we need it, and if you're not going to have it, then you're going to have to supplement. But if you are going to have it, how much should you, you know, all of that. So I don't know if you've got any more to say about that.
What I would say is that we're all different and there is no thing as an average. So going back to the nutrient deficiency point, because, you know, cutting out meat is actually really, you know, it's quite common now to be vegan or vegetarian. And I'm not dismissing that it's a very personal choice. But what I see is there's huge discrepancy when it comes to a reference range, say for iron or B12, which you find in meat. Then you might be at the very low end or at the optimal end. Often the doctors only tell you when you are deficient. So if they say you're iron anemic or B12 anemic, and for example, say the cutoff point is 10, but if you are at 11, they would class you as in the normal reference range, but the reference range goes up to 90 or 120, you know, and are you anywhere near optimal? So I would encourage you to, you know, if you ever get blood tests done, get that, you know, ask for where you are on the range, because the ranges are for average people and we're not average. You know, our own individual needs can be different to what's on a reference range. So it's good to have a starting point. But again, listening to your body, if you're breathless, tired, and you're vegetarian or vegan, you know, get your iron levels checked, because it could take 6, 12, 18 months. You might not make the connection. It could be that the body uses its stores up for quite some time. So you think, well, it's not the diet. I've been on this diet for a couple of years, so it can't be that. But actually the body's got stores of various vitamins and minerals that it'll like get by on and then become depleted. So we're all different, and respect that individuality. How important are fermented foods? Yes, they are. So things like sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha now. So fermented foods are certainly preferable to a supplement, and the nature of the foods often that you would have a small portion of them. So you might not eat a whole jar of sauerkraut, but you would eat obviously a bigger portion of vegetables. So they are part of a varied diet, absolutely, but not, I wouldn't just rely on them exclusively. Feeding our own gut bugs with the prebiotic fruits and vegetables is also important. Do you have any advice for someone living with autoimmune? That's a big question, Caroline. There's a big connection with gluten, with autoimmune disease and dairy as a starting point. And I'd also put the question back to you, do you notice any gut symptoms? You know, so in addition to those thyroid problems and skin problems, do you actually notice any gut dysfunction? We can actually be intolerant or have a problem with gluten without gut problems. So brain fog, aches and pains, you know, systemic issues. We can actually not have a bloating or pain, but still have an issue with gluten. So it's certainly something that you could get checked out with a stool test, or feel free to book in a call with me, Caroline. I'll put my slides back up with my contact information. So yes, there's things you can do, definitely. The gut immune axis. Is there a way to get more whole grains in a gluten-free diet? Absolutely. There's lots of gluten-free grains. So buckwheat, quinoa, rice. So gluten-free grains, absolutely. We can still get whole grains in without relying on the gluten. Are there any foods that can help flare-ups of eczema? Oh. So we do need protein in for that collagen synthesis for the skin. Vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc. So again, like fish and seafood is part of this picture because it's very rich in zinc. Lots of different nutrients with eczema. Yes. Is that a different Nicola to Nicola Mercer? Who's asked that question?
It's me, Julie. And that's partly why I haven't got my camera on, because I've got sore eyes today as well as mucky hair.
Yes, Nicola, I can send you some information about eczema and nutrients.
Brilliant, thank you.
Sorry, it's just difficult to you think about our vitamins and minerals, there's a million of them and it's quite hard to always think of them all off the top of my head. But yes, there's definitely scope. There's a big, the skin is our biggest organ, so it reflects what's going on internally. So if you improve gut function, in essence, you improve skin conditions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Julie.
Julie, Paul's got his hand up as well, just so you know.
Yeah, Paul, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Julie, how do you how do you determine what amount of say if you've got a deficiency on say B12, vitamin D, how you determine how much you're supposed to take? And when you say you're meant to have say protein, how much are you actually, when you say 2 a day, how much weight are you meant to have for that person?
Okay. So the
Does the
nutrient
blood test reveal it? Yeah.
Yeah, so a nutrient deficiency, you'd be starting with a blood test. I would also go from symptoms. So the way I practice is using functional medicine, so using lots of symptoms and life history. If you can't get blood tests, you can read a lot into what's going on for someone. But blood tests ideally would give you your ballpark, and then you would support that with food and potentially supplements short term. Protein, the absolute starting point is 0.7 grams per kilogram of body weight. That is to avoid disease. If you're doing any amount of decent exercise, if you're going to the gym and you're trying to maintain your muscle mass, I would like to start with 1 gram. So 1 gram per kilogram of body weight.
Yeah.
When there's any kind of imbalance in the body, like people are talking about skin or autoimmune, then the body needs a bit more protein to build this up because it's getting used up when there's imbalance. Does that answer your question? Was there anything I'd missed there?
No, that's everything. Thank you.
Is there anything we can do with our diets to improve our sleep? Absolutely. So melatonin, our sleep hormone, is down the same pathway as serotonin. So we need the protein to go in, tryptophan, to make serotonin. From there, we make melatonin, which makes us feel sleepy at nighttime. So often putting in a small snack, an hour or hour and a half before bed, if you're struggling, combining protein and carbohydrate. So the protein is the building block. The carbohydrate is to get it across that blood-brain barrier. So something like porridge or milk has that natural combination of protein and carbs. So the old wives' tale of having milk at nighttime, there's a reason for it. Kiwi and kiwis are naturally high in melatonin. You can buy something called tart cherry juice. It's Montmorency cherries, are also can encourage that melatonin pathway. Nuts and seeds, so having a handful of nuts like walnuts would be quite good. There are also some of the herbs, so things like lemon balm, valerian, lavender. What else have we got? Ashwagandha. So some of the herbs that you can get can be quite good at balancing the nervous system and therefore give more rise to sleepiness. There's a nice product called Motion Nutrition Unwind, which has got, it's got some herbs in. So if you're on any kind of medication, I can't guarantee that it's safe. Drug nutrient interactions are really important. I can't remember what the base product's in, but have a look, Motion Nutrition Unplug. It's quite a nice one to encourage that sleep if you're really struggling, particularly with rumination. When your head hits the pillow and you just can't switch off, that could be quite a nice one. Lots of talk about cortisol. Karen, big subject. So cortisol is our long-term stress hormone. When we're perpetually stressed or chronically stressed, has big impacts on the body. And for the few minutes that I've got left, I would say it's what's causing the stress, getting to that root cause. And if that's environmental, stress uses a lot of these B vitamins up. So B vitamins are water soluble. They don't hang around in the body a long time. Cortisol, to make it, will come and grab those B vitamins, meaning there's not enough left for energy, brain function, and that's why we start to, feel a bit ropey. So whole grains or fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. So our nuts and seeds are really quite big on these vitamins as well. So even if you get a handful of nuts in every day, that would be supporting that cortisol pathway. Is organic worth the extra spend? Potentially, yes. There's a nice website called Pesticide Action Network, PAN UK. We're taking in a cocktail of potential pesticides, which can erode this gut lining and have lots of nasty effects. They're essentially toxins for the brain as well. There's also something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. If you just Google that, there's a list of prioritized fruits and vegetables. Because obviously organic is expensive. Absolutely, I can't afford to eat organic all the time, but that will give you a list of prioritized fruits and vegetables, things like strawberries, things where there's already that skin that you're eating. So like with an orange, you're peeling the skin off. That's going to have less exposure, but things like berries, over the ground vegetables, which are getting sprayed, then they tend to be the priority. So check them out. On the meat front, there's potentially hormones that we're adding in as well with industrial farmed meat. This has to be, I'm not going to get into the ethics of all of this. That's a very personal choice. If you can afford to eat organic, then do. Absolutely. But not everybody can. So lots of varying questions. I love it. Skin, autoimmune, sleep, stress. There's so many different components. All of them are really relevant. We've just honed in on a really small part of the picture. I'm just going to share my contact details. If anybody has any questions, they are welcome to contact me and book in a free half-an-hour chat so I can get a bit more personal about what's going on for you symptom-wise. So there's got my email there. You can book in. If you sign up to my newsletter via my website, you get sort of free recipe book particularly with the brain mind. How can we feed the brain? I do have a new webinar coming on the 9th of May. I was hoping to have the link today, but Eventbrite's gone down this morning. So that's going to be looking more from the business perspective and supporting our staff wellbeing. Brand new course coming online next month. So please join my newsletter list and you'll get more information about that as well. So you'll get the slides, you'll get this contact information through after today. Any final questions? Let's have a look. Any final questions? I appreciate it is lunchtime and your stomach could be gurgling by now. Nope. Okay, in that case, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you found it of some use. And any questions at all, do reach out and contact me separately. Have a great day. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Julie.
Julie.
That's really useful. Thanks,
Bye.
Julie. Brilliant.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.